All right, so we are joined from Huntsville, Alabama by WAAY 31 news anchor, Demetria Green. We thank you so much for joining us today. We got a room full here with me at Velma Jackson High School. We're recording this for all of our friends in Madison County Schools, Madison Central High School, Rosa Scott, Ridgeland High School, Germantown High School, the Academic Options Center, and our YouTube channel. And we are in the Arts AV career cluster. So we thank you so much for taking some time for us today.
It is my pleasure.
All right, so obviously you're there on the morning news there in Huntsville, and you were in Philadelphia before that. But take us back to you are originally from Chicago, went to Florida A&M, great HBCU there in Tallahassee. One of the has produced so many great broadcasters there at Florida A&M. We'll let you make it, even though this is Jackson State Alcorn territory in the SWAC, but still, we'll let you make it today.
Thank you.
But you went to Florida A&M. So take us from your college experience at that great HBCU to where you are now in broadcast journalism.
So actually, it wasn't a straight path. So my love for journalism actually started prior to that. So in high school, I knew that I really wanted to do something with television. I wasn't sure which route I wanted to go to. So I decided to get behind the camera. I was doing a lot of shooting and things like that. So when it was time for me to get ready to go to school, everybody just knew I was going to go into journalism. But I started talking to some people in the field and they said there wasn't any money in it. So I said, okay, well, let me change things up and go to business. So I ended up getting a business degree over at Florida A&M. And it wasn't until I graduated from there that I realized, hey, I really want to go back to my first love, which is journalism. So after I graduated, I worked in corporate America for a few years, didn't like it at all, hated every single moment of it. So I decided to go back to school, get my master's, start interning. Now I went back home to Chicago. That's the third largest market in the country. And places were like, we're not going to bring you on because you don't have any experience. So the only way that I could get experience in that field is if I take an internship. So I was working for free. And my family thought I was crazy. They're like, we paid all this money for you to go to school, and now all you're doing is just going to work for free. And then you have to work other jobs just to eat. Like it was crazy, but I saw the vision and I believed in myself. So I went ahead, I did the internship for about 4 months. That ended up leading to a job. I was production assistant. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I would have to get the anchors clothes, the dry cleaning. Sometimes they would say, oh, I want a spoon. I'm like, oh, here's a spoon. No, I want a metal spoon with like a red tip. And then this, I'm like, okay, whatever. But I didn't mind doing it because they were able to showcase and share some of the knowledge that they had with me. And I had direct access to them. So I didn't mind it at all. So I did that for about 3 years. And then I decided to go ahead and actually take a leap, take a step into the broadcast journalism field. I got my first job in Dothan, Alabama. I remember my first day, they were like, put together a package. And I'm like, I don't know how to do this. So it was like all this on the job training stuff. So I did that for about 4 years. I was able to work my way up to anchor. And then from there, I went to Huntsville, Alabama for about 4 years as well. Started off weekend anchor, was able to work my way up to the evening anchor. And then I went to Philadelphia, as you mentioned. I was a morning anchor there. And now I'm back here in Huntsville.
That's awesome. And a big shout out to Dothan. My grandmother was actually from Ozark, Alabama, which is right down the road from Dothan. So
Yes, in the
uh,
Wiregrass.
yeah, yeah, right down there in Dale County in southeast
Yeah.
Alabama. Now, you did mention you talked about you had to put together a package. Now, I think something that kids don't realize when they watch the news is that yes, you are on the camera reading the news, and you have your stage presence. You're always ready when that red light comes on. But there's been a lot of writing, there's been a lot of filming, there's been a lot of editing before you ever even think of sitting behind that desk. So, talk about some of the preparation for the news that news anchors do, because it's not just let me walk in and start reading.
No, it's not. So my day at work, it starts at 3 a.m., but it starts way before that in actuality. Because as soon as I get up in the morning, I need to go ahead and check what happened overnight. So I'm looking at all the different websites. I'm looking at national stuff because national news could have broken. I'm looking at the local stories because maybe there's a story that happened overnight that we didn't get. So I check all of that stuff before I even come in. So the first thing I do is when I get into work, we already have our producers who are already working. They've been there overnight. I tell them, hey, this is what I saw, this is what's going on. And we kind of collaborate to see how we're going to put in the stories and the flow that is going to go in. After that, we sit down, they tell me, hey, I have a couple stories for you to write. So I have to start gathering information right away just to make sure all of this stuff is accurate. And from there, we go on air, we do the newscast, and then after that, we have to actually post to the website because most people get their information from the web nowadays. People aren't really sitting around waiting until 5 p.m. to find out something that happened at 2 o'clock. So I have to make sure that everything is updated. And that's why I stress the importance of writing. Like that is a core skill that every single journalist needs to have. But yes, those are some things that we need to do. Every single day, we have to come up with story pitches as well. It doesn't matter if you're a reporter, if you're an anchor, if you're a photographer, everyone has to get those news gathering skills. And you have to come up with 2 story pitches every day. Now, at first, when I got that assignment, I was like, oh, this is going to be easy. But then there are some days where it's really slow. And you're like, well, what am I going to do? And that's where those skills come into play. It's okay, let me call up some of my contacts who I have. Like, hey, is there anything going on in your area? Can you tell me about this or tell me about that? But those are all the things that really, really come into play when you watch that newscast.
Yeah, and then especially in mid-sized market like Huntsville and like here in Jackson, I see the anchors all the time carrying cameras. They're doing their own camera work, so they're familiar with how that equipment works because the station may have a few photographers or a few camera guys, but they've still got to get stories. So being familiar with how the equipment works is another huge part of that.
Yeah, you have to know how every single thing works and plays into putting the piece together. So for me, I love to shoot my own stuff. Yes, it's nice to have a photographer, but I like to be creative and I have a vision of how I want things to go. So I like to just grab my camera and go. I don't want to have to wait on somebody else to try to get this stuff set up and this, that, and the other. So I really think to be well-rounded, and especially because you do see like a lot of companies who are going through layoffs and everything. And the more knowledge that you have in all the different fields, then the more marketable that you are too.
I'm sorry, I got buzzed by the office. Now, along the same lines, you mentioned about the overnight stuff. If somebody says, I'd really like to work in TV, I'd like to work on the news, the sports side, the weather side, but I don't really want to be on camera. There's a lot of jobs that are very vital to a newscast, especially now you mentioned with the website. There's people at news stations overnight that update the websites of breaking news that not only the viewers have, but the news team that comes in the next morning has to be able to use as well. So talk about some of those other careers in news because everybody's not in front of the camera.
Everybody is not. I would say the majority of our staff is behind the scenes. So we do have the sales team as well, who's out there putting information out there to get our commercials. They help to like fund us so that we are able to get a lot of the great. Well, I was trying to show you around, but obviously you can't see the rest of the area that I'm in. But then we also have the digital team, and they work so hard. I think they're one of the hardest working people in the area because they are always finding stories. They're going through social media. They're trying to make sure that they can put together a well-crafted story with what they have. So they're not usually using the visual aspect, it's just all basically writing. We also have people who are strictly on social media. So if you really love social media, you know how it works. I kind of suck at it. If you really understand that and how to encourage engagement, then that's something that you could be interested in too. We also have our editors. We have the people who are working behind the scenes to edit all the videotapes that we have that comes in. We have our photographers as well. You know what they do. We have a creative service team as well. So we have sweeps that happens every few months, and we have our creative service team who actually comes up with these ideas for promos. So instead of me just coming and saying, "Hey, I have a story coming up tonight at 10 o'clock," we have a group of people who will actually read my story. They will come up with like a really cool way to market and promote it, and then they will shoot it. So they have their own unit within this news organization. So there are just so many different avenues and so many different fields that you can get into. We talked about producing. We have the digital writers. We also have the writers specifically for television as well. And the assignment editors too, who are sourcing and finding information.
Yeah, and also you need good IT people. You need good, you know,
Hello.
yeah. But especially when it comes to the feed. So big need for IT in this field as well. Now, actually, here at Velma Jackson High School, we have a digital media academy on campus, and we actually have a few students now that are a part of that. And also at Madison Central, my alma mater, which is also in our district, has it as well. And we also have it at our career center over our Madison County Career Technical Center as well. So it really is a skill in area that is getting more and more young people involved in.
Yes. It really is. And in fact, I wish I could turn this camera around to show you all the people who we have coming in, because we have some people who are still in college right now and who are earning their internship credits by helping out in that field as well. So it's pretty cool.
That's awesome. And I know you guys have Alabama Huntsville right there, right there down the road in Alabama A&M. But if, for people that are interested in getting into this field, what are some things to study in college? I know here in Mississippi, Southern Miss has a great television program, as well
Mhm.
as Jackson State and
Yes.
Alcorn. So talk talk about the things you would study in college as you were if you were considering getting into this field.
I think one of the biggest things, English and writing, because that's going to be the core. And that's really going to separate you from somebody else. Because, yeah, if you want to be on camera, you may have the looks, you may have the dialect, your diction is great. But if you don't know the basics in terms of how to write, then you might as well forget about it. So I really think English is very important. I would say some type of graphic design as well, just to help you out with the social media aspect. Because for us, for myself, when I was growing up, we didn't really have social media. So now this is kind of foreign to me. But for those who already grasp it and they have a great concept, they are able to market themselves even better, which helps the station out too. Because the whole goal is to get more eyeballs watching the newscast. And if you can do that through your social media account, you're golden. So I would say those are some of the big things. Let's see, English as well as the graphic design. I even know communication classes. So on the side, I also teach communication at one of the community colleges here, and that is huge. Not just speeches, but in terms of doing stuff like this, mediated communication through technology. How am I able to talk to you? How do you conduct yourself in an interview? Because if I'm going to talk to somebody, if my boss tells me, I need you to go out here and get this story, it's of a woman whose house just burned down, I'm not going to talk to her the same way that I'm talking to somebody else who just won a lottery. I may have to change my tone. I may have to lower my voice a little bit. And all of those skill sets, well, a lot of those you will learn in classes like that.
That's awesome. Now, you mentioned something there, and I'm glad you did, because even though people watch the news to get informed and know about things that are happening in the community, way to prepare for things in the community, at the end of the day, it is a television show. You've got to make people watch. And I mentioned before we started recording that you guys do some things like that. You have your weather wordle on Friday, which I thought was really cool. You're a meteorologist. So what are some things that you guys have done, or maybe you've seen other stations do that can make people watch? Because yeah, people want the news, but they want to see people that are having a good time and can get the
Mhm.
viewer engaged.
Yeah, I think the big thing is social media. So we just had a company who came in and they are trying to brand each one of us. So they're trying to look at your assets. What are some of your strengths that you bring to the table? So some of the things that we're starting to do now is everybody is having their own branded segment. So our meteorologist, she has the weather wordle where you play like a wordle game. I have another co-anchor who is actually doing something on the hidden gems that are in Alabama. I'm doing stuff for parents since I am a parent of two little kids. Like, what are some things that could affect them in the schools that's happening right now? So we're trying to find little segments to reach a certain group of people. And hopefully the interests of all the different anchors that we have will be able to reach everybody, if that makes sense. The other thing we're starting to do more of is do a lot more behind the scenes stuff. So yes, we're on television, we're professional, we're this, that, and the other. But as soon as that red light goes out, we're real people. We like to cut up. We like to have a good time. So we're trying to show more behind the scenes stuff. How do we get to this point? How do we put together the newscast? And a lot of people have really, really been latching on to that. So we've been doing that more so on social media.
Yeah, and you're dating yourself because you talked about you didn't have social media. I'm sure in Chicago, the only social media you guys got was Channel 9 with Allison Payne. So,
Hello.
that was all you got. So I don't think these kids realize how lucky they are. Now, one thing I did also want to talk about is there's a big a big controversy over how the way black females wear their hair on the air. I know there was a big lawsuit in Jackson a few years ago over it, and there's been it's been going on a lot nationally, but this is a field that desperately needs diversity because you have a diverse group of people watching the news, and the people that are on TV should represent the people that are watching. So talk about, if you've had any experience with that, and then why there's such a need for every kids of all backgrounds to really look into being a part of this.
So when I was coming up, and I told you I was doing a few internships, I was at one particular station. I remember there was this girl, she was white, she had really, really curly hair. And our boss said the first thing, you cannot come on TV with curly hair. You have to get it straightened. And that was always ingrained in me. Every time I would talk to some of the anchors in Chicago, they were always like, make sure you have your straight hair. So getting into the business, getting into the industry, it was just in my mind. So what is acceptable is straight hair. However, as I continue to grow and get older and mature more, my hair can't take all of that. So what I have been doing, I've been doing weaves, I've been doing wigs, and then I decided to do braids on air in Philadelphia. And it was weird because at my grown age, I was scared to go on TV with braids, something that I typically do all the time. But it was actually very well received. And I think that was because of the market. Like you said, I was being reflective of the viewers who were watching that. And so when I left there and I came back here to Huntsville, I was like, okay, it's summertime. Let me go ahead. I'm just going to get braids again. Didn't even think twice about it. And as soon as I came in, he was like, what's going on with you? What is that? And so my bosses, they weren't upset about it. More so just like a heads up. And is this a look that you're keep? Because in the contracts that we typically get, to keep that look for the entire duration of your contract. And if you have to change your look, then you need to let them know. And I do understand where they're coming from because there's a lot of promotion that goes into it. They want to make sure that the marketing materials, when they're sending stuff out, it still looks like me. So when people tune in, they say, okay, well, that's Demetria. But that was just a really hard pill to swallow to know that, okay, because of my hair, that somebody would not watch. And I did get a few emails of people who were like, hey, I love it. Keep it up. I love the natural look. You're encouraging my daughters. But then I also did get a lot of emails saying, hey, this is bad. You're not looking professional. I used to enjoy watching you and I don't want to watch it anymore. And that was just with braids. For a little while, I actually wore my hair back in a ponytail, just had my natural. And even then, you would get some stuff like, you need to wear it down, that, the other. So at this point now, I have some bosses who are just really kind and they just, if I give them a heads up and let them know ahead of time, they'll pretty much let me do what I need to do. As
Wow.
long as I keep it neat, whatever it is, just make sure I keep it neat.
Wow, that's crazy. Now, last thing I want to talk about before I get to the students' questions is, one thing on the news is that I think an easy trap for especially a new news person to fall into is you only cover stuff that you like. You see a lot of this in the sports side is, you only cover the teams that you like. You have to be mindful of who's watching. You have to be mindful of what's important to them, and you have to be mindful of, I may not think this is a big deal, but a lot of people that are watching me may think it's a big deal. So, what are some ways that you've done that? And what are some things that maybe you've experienced that maybe you may not have experienced before, but you were able to bring it to the community?
I try to do this all the time. I try, like, that is actually my goal. It's so funny that you do mention that because I like to get things that people don't really care about or something that they would see every single day, don't pay any mind, don't pay any attention to, and make it a big deal. So that's a challenge that I give myself. I remember I would drive to work every day, and there was this guy, he was outside, he was an older guy, and he was always picking up trash. So many people were always passing him. I remember one day being in our news meeting and saying, man, I was coming in and everybody just kept passing this guy who was picking up trash. And everybody's like, oh yeah, I've seen him. So I said, let me go out and do a story. Let me find out his background. And it turns out the man was very, very interesting. He was a wealthy man. People thought that he was like a homeless guy or something like that. It had a really good story. But it's stuff like that. It's just finding some things that may be interesting or some things that just may appeal to the goal is to get as many people to watch. So something that could appeal to the masses and then try to find a way to make sure that you can broaden that out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sorry, I keep getting interrupted by people.
You're fine.
Now, before, I want to get to some questions. And I'm
Yes.
glad that they are really thinking about this stuff. So these are some really good ones. Um, Now, this is an interesting one, and I've actually seen some other things about this nationally. This is to Davian Smith. He's in ninth grade. He's a member of our band here. And he asked, have you ever had to go out in a place that you may have been that may have been dangerous to go to while reporting a story?
Yes, it happened all the time. I mean, whenever there's a car crash, plane crash, anything like that, we're the first people to go out there on the scene. And I remember that some people were smelling gas and they wanted some people to come out there to check what was going on. We get out there and sure enough that there was some gas leaking and it was very, very dangerous scene. I ended up getting my car stuck out there, so staying out there a little bit longer than I needed to. But that's That's the job. That's what we signed up for. Because my thing is, I want to make sure everybody is safe. I want to make sure you're good. I want to make sure you avoid coming into this area. So we go to dangerous scenes all the time. We go to the fires, we go to the floods, we go to the shootings. We do put our lives on the line to make sure that we bring the best story for you all.
Absolutely. This is
And as
our
I say that out loud, that's a little crazy. As I say that out loud.
Oh, and the best part is, you may have to reach in your purse and put on some makeup because you never had a chance to go to the studio.
Hello. That happens so many times. I throw a baseball cap on, have my lip gloss, and say, okay, let's do it.
Hey,
Let's
that
get it.
hey, that's awesome. This is Irene Harris. She's one of our volleyball players here, and she asked, "Were you nervous or scared the first time you were going to be on camera?"
I get nervous and scared a lot of times. When I know that something is different, that's what kind of scares me a little bit. So the key is though, is to push through it. So I am nervous a lot of times. You may see me, especially when it comes to doing a live shot, because you're out in the field. You don't have a prompter in front of you. It's just you and the camera. You don't know who's going to come behind you. You don't know what's going to happen. And so, yes, that is a little nerve wracking, but you keep pushing. I always think, what is my message? What am I trying to say? And let me get the words out. So that's a great question.
Oh, and this is a great question here. I love this one. This is Precious Willis. She's one of our Digital Media Academy students and one of our volleyball players. And she asked, when you are getting ready for an interview, how do you prepare and what is the process like?
Ooh, that is a good question. So the first thing I do is I typically just Google the person and try to see and find as much information as I can that's available on the internet. From there, I then take it to social media. So I may go onto Facebook, I may stalk your Instagram pages because I'm trying to find little nuggets that most people won't ask about. Because if I'm just doing the generic questions that everybody does, then what's going to make you tune in to what I have to say? You're going to tune in if I have an exclusive or if I tell you something new about this person. So I try to dig in that way. But I would say the question that I ask where I get like the most interesting stuff during my interview is, hey, is there anything else that you would like to tell me that I did not ask you? When I ask that question, that's when people start opening up. They're like, yeah, did I tell you 10 years ago I won such and such, or I'm being nominated for XYZ, or most people don't know this about me, but and they go into detail. So that is a great question. Those are some of the things I do. Or if I know, like if it's a big person, like when I've done celebrities, I would also take to social media and ask other folks, like, hey, what's something that you would like to know about this person? And I would take some of their questions back and ask.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because obviously this is a type of job where you get to rub shoulders with celebrities sometimes. But you have to stay professional. That's not the time to fangirl out, even if you are a huge fan of them. So, but who are just a few of the celebrities you've had a chance to meet?
Oh my goodness. So I did the Country Music Awards. So I've met like Garth Brooks, Simone Biles, just about any country music singer that you could think of. When it comes to movies, like Rap Gabrielle Union, I met her a few times. I met a lot of folks on American Idol because we did a lot of work with them as well. Who else have I met? There's been a lot of folks. I can't keep them all in
I
mind,
like
but
this one.
yeah.
This is Alonzo Green. He's also one of our digital media students. He's a member of our band here at Velma Jackson. And he asked, what are some struggles that you've had to deal with as you moved up in your career?
I think that is a great question. It changes. So before it was just trying to figure out what a package was and how I can appeal to other people. The next step was, well, how do I get to the anchor desk? Then the next step was, I'm at the anchor desk. How do I stay? Now I'm at the point where, how do I balance everything? So I have two little kids. I have a husband. I have this job. I also teach. So how am I going to balance everything to still be a well-rounded person? And that's what I tend to struggle with almost every single day because this job will take a lot out of you. It's Most people get the holidays off. We're still here. News never stops. It's 24/7. So how am I going to put my best foot forward every single day, but still be there for my family, still be there for my other job as well?
Yeah, and that's always been amazing to me is how especially our news people here in Jackson and other places, how they manage to have a family and still keep up with the crazy schedule. It really is very taxing, but obviously it is possible. It's just all about prioritization. I like this one. This is Jernylin Fleming Nash, one of our band members here at Velma Jackson, and she asked, "What is something that you would tell someone that wanted to get into this career after they finished high school?"
Um, Number one, make sure you study. Make sure you study it. But the biggest thing is be authentic. Be yourself. When I was getting into it, I thought that I had to look like the people who I saw in Chicago. I had to sit like them. I had to talk like them, the diction that they use. But what really makes me unique and makes me really valuable is because I am me. So there will be sometimes when I'm reading a story and I'm like, that doesn't make sense. And I may actually say it because that's probably what you're thinking at home. And that's a way for me to connect with viewers and viewers to connect with me. And they're like, oh, wow, she is just like that, but like us, because that did make sense. So I would say be authentic to your true self. Do not try to change who you are to fit the job because there is a place for every single person. And there are people who will connect to you as long as you're being true to yourself.
Absolutely. And I think that also makes, a good news person, period. If they know somebody's being authentic, they know somebody's telling the
Yes,
truth and has done the research and cares about what they're saying, it gives you that much more credibility as a news person. Um,
right.
I just got two more. This is Michaela Job. She's in 10th grade. And she asked, what is some advice that you would give someone that is struggling to decide what area of journalism to take upon as a career?
I would say, as I mentioned before, get to learn every single department because originally I thought I was going to be great behind the camera and just doing the technical side. But as I got to experience it and see more things, I learned, hey, I love being in front of it and behind it. But I would say if you do an internship, learn everything. One of my mentors told me always say yes. I mean, I kind of agree with that, but then I don't. Uh, but if you have an opportunity to see what people are doing in terms of in the master control, make sure you check that out. If you don't get an opportunity to do that, if you happen to find somebody, say, hey, can I do that? Can I sit in with you? Can I learn more? I just want to just observe what you're doing. So I would say learn every single thing you can about this news operation.
Absolutely. Now, so last one from the students, and this is so good. This is so good. This is Layla Jones. She's ninth grade, one of our band members and volleyball player, and she asked, "What has your journey taught you, and has it made you a better person?"
Oh, oh my goodness. That's a really good question. What has my journey taught me? My journey has taught me that I can do all things. I can do anything that I really work hard towards, and I can succeed in that field. And I say that because I told you my story. I only did business. I didn't know anything about this TV world when I got into it, but I was able to not only get into it, to do well, but to succeed. And that feels amazing because not only does it help me, but I'm able to share my story with other people and hopefully inspire you. And you could think, oh, well, maybe I could get into that field. So it's a trickle down effect. And that's what I love.
That's awesome. Now we're almost out of time, and we thank you so much for
That
taking
was
some.
so fast.
Oh, hey, time flies when you're having fun. But before we go, a couple of things. First of all, even though we're not in the Huntsville market, we can still see you on the WAAY app. So tell us how we can see you on the WAAY app in the mornings.
Yeah, if you go to waytv.com, we do have a QR code that you can just go ahead and scan right there, and you'll be able to access us. You can see all the different newscasts. You can also follow me on social media because I need some followers. And if you have tips for me, let me know. Like, hey, this is what you need to do to boost your reel or whatever. I'm at Demetria.tv news on Instagram and on Facebook. I am Demetria Green, Way 31.
Yeah, and again, like I said, you've got some really cool clips. The you guys weather wordle on Fridays is hilarious, and it really is a cool way to bring the weather to the viewers. But before we go, obviously, there is a need for all types of young people to get into this field, no matter what their background is. So even if they're a woman that says maybe I can't do this, or they're a minority saying maybe I can't do this, there's a place for them. So why should they really consider getting into this field that really needs young talent?
Because we need the diversity and we need to hear voices from people, especially young people. Because a lot of times we're in this industry and we just are in these walls and we just see only what's in front of us, what's on the side of us. And we need those other perspectives so that we can tell more stories. If something is very important to you, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be very important to maybe 10, 20, 30 other people as well. So we do need to hear those young voices. If you do have something you can contribute, even if you don't think you have anything to contribute, you do. Just like I told you about social media, you probably all are on social media, you do this all the time. Well, those are the kind of people who we need. These are the people who we're hiring for right now. If you are good at sending tweets on X, if you're good at writing like the little captions, these are the folks who we need. So do not feel like you do not have anything to contribute because you always do.
That's awesome. Well, again, we thank you so much for taking some time for us today. Demetria Green, WAAY, Channel 31, right there in Huntsville, Alabama. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah. Thank you for inviting me. I had a blast. And those are some of the best questions I've had. Seriously.
I didn't coach them at all. They came up with them on their own. I was very,
Seriously?
yeah.
Wow. That's amazing.
Well, thank you so much. I'll talk to you soon, buddy.
Yes. Take care.
See ya.